Hello and welcome to the benign Creations Custom Jewelers webinar. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Cody Cooper and I'm a sales engineer here at benign Creations. I will be your host today. We will be going over custom jewelers tips for taking your business digital. Today we have Kevin Fertenbaugh, Patrick Dobbs, and Trevor Vipond joining us today. They'll introduce themselves in a bit here. Today you're going to be learning what to consider when you're thinking about adopting 3D printing into your workflow, how to make the leap from your current method of production to 3D printing, and the versatility of 3D printing from startups to larger scale manufacturers. First off, I'm going to release a quick poll that I'm going to send out for our listeners to answer. Please take the time to fill this out, and we appreciate this immensely for our information here. All right, so without further ado, first up we have Kevin Fertenbaugh. Kevin, can you get us started here?
Hey, good morning, everybody. So it looks like I'm going to be covering what to consider when thinking of adopting 3D printing in your workflow. Just to give you a little background about myself, I've grown up in the jewelry business. My father had a store, been on the sales floor since I was about 8 years old, been a bench jeweler since 1988. I kind of adopted technology early on because I loved computers, did some programming in college, started with CAD programs in the late 90s. And then Matrix is my main go-to program today, along with ZBrush and several other smaller programs. I didn't get into the 3D printing part of things till probably about 5-6 years ago. I started off using a 4-axis mill. When GemVision came out with their 4-axis mills, that's kind of how I got started in all of this, and used that to actually produce my models. Prior to that, obviously, I hand carved just like many of us have. So anyways, I've owned several 3D printers, and for me, when people ask me a lot of times, like, what's the best printer? The whole thing is that there's a lot of really good printers out there. Since the patents have expired on the 3D printing technology, I mean, you look around the corner and every day there's a new one out there. And there's lots of good ones, actually. But there's things that you want to kind of look at when you're trying to get into this kind of technology. And the first thing I always ask people about, how many models are you going to be making, on a weekly basis? I mean, are you doing a single custom piece a week? You doing 2? You doing 5? You doing 10? Or do you do 50? So I always start there. I mean, you got to kind of take a look at your business and see what your needs are as far as the number of models you need to produce. The second thing I kind of look at is what type of jewelry you're making. There's a lot of different styles of jewelry, and today, particularly with a lot of the sculpting software such as ZBrush, you can get some really intricate and detailed type of pieces. If you're making like filigree type pieces, obviously they're going to require a different type of need from your 3D printer. And that can come into play as to like the technology. For example, a lot of the printers out there right now that you're seeing are digital light processing printers, or DLP printers. And that's where you have a resin and you've got a light engine that actually cures the resin in different layers. And that's really the most popular right now. One of the advantages of it is it's less expensive. another advantage of it is that it's very fast. And, you know, the third thing is the resolution you can get from it is fantastic. Another popular one is stereolithography, or SLA, and that's simply where a laser is used to cure the resin in place of a standard a light bulb or light engine. And then the last one is a wax pattern printer. And the advantage to the wax pattern printer is that it's got a support material. So when it builds your model, it builds the support material with it, and you just simply dissolve away the support material. And the advantage of that is that if you have a real detailed model, lots of undercuts and things of that nature, that could be the best solution for you. Because with the DLP printers, you have to actually apply supports to your model. And sometimes those supports can be easily placed. Other times it can be really difficult and challenging, and it can affect the cleanup of your model. So these are the kind of things that you're looking at when you're looking at the type of printer that you want for your business. Another real crucial important part is how much time do you have to allocate to learning about 3D printing. And that can have a really big impact on the printer that you choose. If you don't have a lot of time to invest into learning technology, understanding how it actually works, there's different printer systems out there where basically it's plug and play. You plug it in, load your file, hit a few buttons, and away you go. Come back later, get your part. There's other ones that require, lots of technical information, where you have to do calibrations. They can have a lot more maintenance to them. It just really depends on your specific need, and none of us have the exact same need. So, and that's why it's really important you take time to look at those things in your business. Next thing, obviously, is going to be cost. I mean, what's this going to cost you to get set up and running? And all too often, people look at just the machine itself. And it's not just the price of the machine. I mean, you got to take a look at things like the supplies that you need. If you're using a resin printer, how much does the resin cost? How often do you have to buy it? You have to look at kind of the support materials. What do I need for cleanup? What do I need in supplies to actually complete your whole package? Oftentimes we forget about there's a lot of other stuff that you have to buy. There are systems out there where you open the box, set it up, they give you everything that you need, and you're off and to the races. So you have to ask the questions and look at those specific things to make sure that you're getting the right type of printer for your business needs. Let's see here. Maintenance is a big issue. Some machines, require ongoing regular maintenance, not just in calibration. Some of the wax pattern printers have jets. Those jets have to be replaced every so often. You have to be paying attention, what is the cost of those jets in order to replace them? Can they just be cleaned? Can they be rebuilt? These are kind of the things that you have to look at when you're making the investment into 3D printing. The next thing is just simply the use of the machine. How complicated is your machine going to be to use? So if you don't have a lot of time, are you going to allocate the task to an employee? Do you have to train somebody? Do you need one person, two people in order to run the machine? What kind of specialized skills is the person going to need in order to do it? Is the machine trainable? I mean, is it easy for for you to train an employee to use it? Or if you're going to be doing it yourself, can you easily do it yourself? You have to be taking a look too at what kind of support you have for that particular machine. One of the things I always focus on is I look for a company that's got a culture or a community where you can contact other people who are using the machine that will run into the problems or any situations you might run into out in the field. Because not all the time is the company going to be available for you. Obviously, they have certain business hours, whereas with a forum or community, you can get to people when you need somebody to try and help you out. And that's kind of an important factor for me when I'm looking at a machine. Something else I look at real closely, how many steps are involved in actually going through the printing process. So I mostly use DLP machines. I'm looking at the software. How easy is the software to use to generate the supports and do the slicing? You know, is it very time consuming? How quickly can I get from the software to the printer, getting my part loaded and going? What kind of things do I have to set up on the machine prior to printing? And then obviously, how fast does it get it done? And then when I'm done, how simple is it with cleanup? Do I have to do a lot of things, or can I throw it in something and let it go and come back and get it later? Those are the kind of things I'm looking at as I'm working with this kind of technology. In the beginning, I didn't really care about that. I just wanted cheap. I wanted to get into the 3D printing process. And real quickly, all these things I'm talking about became very evident to me. And I realized that cheap is not always better. So you have to account for all of those things. And time is money for me. I'm kind of a one-man band. So for me, I really take a close look at all those kinds of elements. The other thing you want to look at, obviously, is your company's support. You know, if you're using this technology a lot and it's an important part of your business, you want to make sure that you've got somebody there at your back when your machine goes down, because at some point it's going to. It's just inevitable. It's just part of, you know, having any machine. And when it's an integral part of your business, you want to make sure that you've got a company standing behind you, that they can take care of you, to answer your questions, that they can, you know, offer support, technical advice, and at the same time, they can take care of repairing the printer if it's needed and do it quickly. You know, in this business, time is money, just like any of them, but you just need somebody there that's going to have your back, particularly if you don't have, you know, employees to handle different things. You don't need the extra stress. So I look at that as a very crucial part of your business decision on what printer to buy. Something else that you want to consider, you need to kind of take a look at the build materials depending upon what type of printer you're getting. You know, we're in jewelry, so obviously we want to get that part to metal. How easy is it to cast the material? I want to know, are there other people out there doing it? And if they are, is there a track record? And with that track record, you know, are people successful with it? Are there lots of problems? Is there somebody I can call and talk to about casting issues? A lot of times it can be just simply about how you support the material. A big part of it is how the material is cured, particularly in the DLP printers. So you kind of need to be asking a lot of those types of questions when you're making these decisions. And you want to definitely be on board with somebody that has a lot of units out there that they're using and people are making jewelry already with, so that if you run into a problem, again, that community can back you up in addition to the company that's selling the product for you. So that pretty much covers my end of it, and we'll pass things over to Patrick.
All right, thanks so much, Kevin. Yep, as Kevin said, we're going up to Patrick Dobbs. Yeah, please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your business here.
Good morning, everyone. This is Patrick Dobbs. I've been bench jeweler since 88, 89, about the same time Kevin started. I have more hair than Kevin, but other than that, I think he's probably smarter than me, so it balances out. So a couple of things we're going to talk about today is, what to expect going from making by hand to the digital world. One of the first things I'm going to say is, and I'm sure Kevin could attest to this, but whenever you go from carving or hand making models into doing them by CAD, the first thing that was difficult for me is I could carve a wax in about 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Having the discipline to actually sit down and do it in CAD, it may take 2 hours to do, so you do have to, have a little bit of discipline that you're gonna learn it, because it'll pay you off in the future. It'll pay dividends. So, you end up having to make decisions like, is that close enough? Is that what I was looking for? Is it close enough? And I always tell everyone, don't compromise on your design. Make sure the design is what you want it to be, and don't go, well, this kind of looks like what I was going for, and I'm going to stop there. There's a lot of people out there making jewelry that way, and you see a lot of that kind of stuff in K's and all these mass-produced places. So I would encourage you, make sure that you're making what you want and not just stopping because it's somewhat close. The second thing I would say is, there's 3D printing is and can be a complicated process. So there are so many things when you're looking at a 3D printer. They can be really, really, really complicated and time consuming. And, Kevin touched on this a little while ago. You can spend all of your time, and I've done this with other printers. I actually own like 6 different printers and have used a bunch in the past. We have 5 or 6 in our studio now. And the ones that I've owned in the past, so much of my time was spent trying to figure out how I could get something printed or why it didn't work. You'd print something, and I had a printer one time that I've never seen models as good as I could get off that printer, but I could turn around and hit print again and not get a model off it the second time. So you end up just spending so much time trying to keep the printer running. And why is it like this? And should I add supports here? Should I raise the intensity? Should I lower the, there's just so many different things you can consider. And when I started using the Core series, I didn't have to do that. I could sit down and work at my bench, and I knew when I got up to go get my part off the printer, it was going to be there. So, if you want to be a 3D printing expert, there's what I call hobby printers out there where you can play around with with all of the intricacies of a 3D printer. But if you want to be a bench jeweler and a designer, I say get a printer that that when you go to get your part off of the printer, it's going to be there. So, and that was one of the things I appreciated about the Core series. I didn't have to worry about it. It was just there. So I would say find a printer that's easy to use, like I said, Core series, and then you can get back to work. You get back to the bench and let it be printing while you're setting stones or, assembling something. Another thing is make sure the resin that you're going to use in your printer is easily castable. Casting is, this is how we make jewelry off of the parts that we take off a 3D printer. The printers that, the Core series printers and any of the benign resins, the yellow and the emerald green are both really, really good castable resins. I've used them for years. I even used them before I owned a Core series. I owned several other printers, and we would use those resins to print with other printers. Very good resins and easy to use. You cure the resins in a curing oven and make sure the resins are cured. Learn your burnouts and learn what kind of geometry won't cast well. That was another thing that was a little bit difficult for me, going from hand carving and assembling to 3D printing and having to deal with a little bit of the, what can cast and what won't. You're able to do things with these printers to such a degree that there'll be geometry that won't cast well. If you have a lot of undercuts and things like that, really hard to get it to cast well. So you have to fix that in the CAD before you start 3D printing. It's pretty easy to understand once you figure out why something didn't work. But anyway, the last thing you want to do is have to worry about why your printer's not printing. So another thing that I would like to touch on is try to stay organized. And people that know me would probably say, well, Patrick's about the most unorganized person on the planet, but I'm not. I actually do try to stay organized, and I have people that help me stay organized, and I have systems that help me. One of the things is project management software. Anyone that knows me knows I'm always preaching about project management software. There's a couple of good ones out there. Kevin was telling me about one that he's used that I've never used, but I've used Rike, which is WRIKE, and then I've also used Asana. And when you do that, you can create a project, and this really helps down the road. In the beginning, you'll think, man, this is kind of cumbersome, but it's really not when you understand what you're going to be using it for. Because here's a example with this. This is Rike that you're looking at here. As I get the information that I need, all of that is put into Rike. The ring size, the stone sizes, everything is put into there. Any of the pictures that are examples that someone has drawn, it could be on a bar napkin, it could be a picture that someone saw is like, well, I like the top of this ring, but I like the side of this ring, but I want to use my stone and I want it to be this big or whatever. All of those instructions and everything can all be kept right here on Rike, so that when you sit down to design it in CAD, you have one place to go and look for your information. And then once it is designed, you can put your render that will be shown to a customer right there in the same folder. So when the customer comes in, you have the stone weights, you have the metal weights, you have everything you need to know right there on Rike in one place. So that really helps out. It also helps out in storing the 3DMs, the models that you actually designed in whatever CAD program you're using. All of it can be stored right there on the project management software. And 2 years down the road, you have a customer comes in and say, I saw this ring one time and I really liked it, but I would want it in a marquee. instead of an oval or whatever. Then you can go back and you have your files and everything from the previous job. So, 90% of your work is done for you already. You can go back and alter, or at least see how you created it the first time, so that when you go to create it a second time, it's there and handy for you. So I really, really like using the project management software. I do custom work for people and design work for different jewelry stores throughout the United States. And I have them, whenever they send me work, it's done through Reich. In my studio, where we're, producing a line, we do all of that in Asana. That way, whenever something is made, we assign it a style number. That style number is stored in Asana. And then all of the jewelry photography and things like that before it goes on the website, it's all done in Asana. So everything's really easy to keep track of, and when you're using a good project management software. Another thing you can do, I don't do this, but you can, is you can save your STLs on there. So, if you just needed to print another one, and this has happened to me where, a customer had lost a ring and they came in and they said, well, we need another one of those rings. It's just easy to just take the STL out of there and print it again. All the supports, everything can be in place if you want to do it that way. But anyway, project management software is really the way to go. It changed my life. Second thing, or third thing on the list, would be 3D scanners. We purchased a 3D scanner from Benign Creations, and it has really changed the way we do things. It shows it there on the far right. And we have like 50 or 60,000 carats of gemstones that we're using to make jewelry. And what we do is we actually scan those gemstones and create a library of them. So whenever I go to design, I don't need the stone right there in my hand. I just go and pull the file. And here's a really good example of a aquamarine pendant that I designed. We had a scan of the stone, and I was able to design around it. And I'm telling you, man, it really, really saves time and effort when you can do it this way. And after it's cast and ready to set, you just go get the stone out of inventory at that time, and you don't have a whole bunch of large, expensive stones laying around on your desk or on your bench. It really makes that part of the business easier. When you're working with the scanned stones, you can actually import them into your software, and if there's any issues with it or whatever, your software can actually fill it and fix it very simply. It's a click of a button. And that's what I did here. We actually scanned the bottom of this aquamarine. Didn't have to scan the top because it didn't really matter. So I just filled the top in so that it was flat. So that's why it looks strange. That's not how you get it off of the scanner. And then from that point, you can actually use that stone as a cutter and cut it away from your material. So you're talking about having a seat cut. I mean, it's exactly cut. The facets and everything will be in there. So that scanner is a real time saver. So anyway, that about wraps it up for everything I had to tell you. I hope it was informative. You all have a good day.
All right. Thank you so much, Patrick. We really appreciate your input there and sharing a bit about your business there. We're going to move on to Trevor Vipond now. Please tell us a bit about yourself and your business there.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So yeah, a brief history and my background. My name is Trevor Vipond. I promise I'm a nice person despite my slightly aggressive photo there. I am the lead production designer for a company called Cavalier here in Vancouver, Canada. I do not have the same wealth of knowledge as Kevin and Patrick, so this is more of a case study on digital design and 3D printing, what's worked for me as well as Cavalier. Many of these things you might already know, but hopefully there's some bits that you can find valuable to apply to your business. If not, hopefully it's at the very least an okay story. So I started in art school. I have no jewelry background. There's no one in my family in jewelry. I started in sculpture. All my sculpture started getting smaller, and someone suggested jewelry, and it just kind of seemed like a good idea. I'm the young gun of this trio, so I started in jewelry in 2010. But what I did have was a pretty extensive computer knowledge. I've grown up around computers. It's just been a part of my life. So yeah, while I was in school, I started learning on 3 and 4 axis milling machines. They were built in the 90s. They were very old, but they kind of did the trick, I guess, at the time. It gave me at least a taste of what kind of digital design and 3D modeling could do. Unfortunately, they were not the best. They weren't very reliable, and they could only do so much being 3 and 4 axis. So while I was in the middle of school, I was, had heard about 3D printing and started to find kind of printers online, see if any of them would fit my business or fit kind of what I wanted to do. And at the time, I found the first benign Kickstarter. So I kind of have a Kickstarter rule where I won't support Kickstarters if it's the first thing that they've made. So I decided to wait and see how it went. They ended up doing their second Kickstarter, and I jumped in. So from there, I had this kind of very early jewelry knowledge. No one really to ask, but I had a lot of help from teachers, and this printer came, so I started to use that and started to build models for projects and that sort of thing. As I started to build models for projects, I started to realize that some of my fellow students also wanted 3D design done, so I started marketing my skills to them, and then kind of realized that, hey, even though I'm in school, I can make jewelry for other people. Obviously, I don't need to wait until school's done to start making money, so why not just do it now? I had a bunch of sort of online communities that I was a part of, so I used the web to find clients, similar to finding clients in person. It kind of just networked out from there, just from word of mouth. So from the school atmosphere, I finished school, kind of had this base, and then I created my company, Hewn, which does more artistic work, and then custom engagement rings as well, because, I mean, that's where the money was, and I had student loans to pay. So yeah, so I started doing that, and what I realized was not only was this 3D printing so helpful to me just as a single person trying to make my way in the jewelry world, but also what it did is it freed up all this time to learn other skills, really focus on my goldsmithing, focus on business skills, work on accounting, all that kind of stuff. It's actually really great. I was a terrible wax carver, so it's nice that I had 3D design and 3D printing to kind of, help me along. And a huge benefit for me at the time was, even if I was a better wax carver, I was able to make models far beyond my skill level. So I was able to produce work really early on at, quite a good level. So that was all with the benign 1.1. Prints took about 12 hours. It had its issues, but they were fine at the time. And I kind of grew up with this printer. So as I finished school, did a bit of my own work, and eventually moved back from school in Toronto to Vancouver, I started working here at Cavalier. They had been open for about a year. The two owners had a history in gem sales, wholesale gemstones, primarily sapphires, but neither of them knew how to make jewelry. They were using contracted goldsmiths to kind of make the jewelry for them, and it was a bit of a gong show. So I came in, yeah, at about that year mark, and kind of said, hey, I've got this 3D printer, you know, let's kind of see what we can do. So what we realized really early on was that not only is 3D printing an incredible technology, but also it's an incredible way to keep clients. So when people would come in before me getting there, they'd look around and they'd look at samples, and you know, they'd do the standard sort of jewelry store buying experience. But once we had this system set up, it meant that people would come in and we could show them 3D models, we could show them renders. We had this larger catalog of designs to show people. So we get them to pay a small design deposit that was applied to their ring cost in the end. You know, we kind of show them a bit of the work we had done to gain their trust, and then we would do their design. We would show them renders, we'd make tweaks, and then we'd 3D print a ring that they could try on their finger. Our market here in Vancouver is quite heavily skewed towards people wanting unique, wanting handmade. You know, so when we tell people that we can design a ring to exactly their stone, exactly their finger, you know, I mean, it's a really big selling point. The other benefit we realized as we were in this kind of startup environment was that we could use 3D printing and digital design as a way to keep inventory down. So when we first started, we had about 15 rings in the showcase, very standard stuff, nothing crazy, really more for people to try different size stones on. And then we had, as I had mentioned, this huge kind of catalog and that was, you know, always building as we did more work of renders, 3D prints, you know, all that kind of stuff, just to kind of show people and show them what we can do to get them to put this design deposit down and then to work on their own work. So it meant that we weren't really putting out a lot of money, especially because, I mean, it was really nice. When I started there, I was 25, the owners were 27, and our saleswoman was, I think, 26. So we were all young. We didn't have a lot of money. And so it was a really great way to kind of keep this business running, pay the rent, and not have to put out a ton of money into gold in inventory. Something that was really important to this process as well was we took a section of the showcase and we created kind of like a little diorama of how 3D printing works. So there'd be like a little glass bottle of some brass casting grain as gold, some files, some hammers, you know, to kind of represent goldsmithing, I guess. But then an iPad running with renders, some 3D prints on stands, the cast rings on stands, and then a finished ring with a CZ set in it on a stand. So people could see this as this kind of visual representation of, whoa, this is a really cool, unique process. This is how, you know, my design is going to go. We can kind of do whatever we want because we can make these changes along the way without having to recarve waxes or, you know, recast rings, use a lot of gold. So from there, it was all about scaling up. So after we established this base, we ended up getting a benign, through this process, we ended up getting a benign Creator 1.2. It was really great, brought the printing time from 12 hours down to 4. That seemed like a godsend. You know, I mean, it was just now we could output so much more. I am the only designer, and at a time I was the only one casting and printing. So all of this digital tech has allowed me to be the one person kind of running behind the scenes. We still contracted out finishing rings and setting stones, but the rest of it I was able to do as this business kind of grew. So as we're scaling up, we could kind of match the demand because of all these technologies. And then the benign core came along, and that was just like a game changer. I mean, now we're printing rings in an hour and a half. The quality of them printing is so nice. I don't have to change PDMS anymore, which is just the nicest thing ever. So it was just another thing that helped us kind of scale this this company up, along with this huge now file catalog of renders and files to showcase to clients. And not only that, now we have this big catalog of files that we can use to build other rings. So when we're building a ring now, I mean, yeah, every once in a while we'll build one completely from scratch, but quite often we're using bands, or we're using setting styles that we'll tweak to fit a new sapphire, or you know, that kind of thing. So it's been very helpful having all of these printers, I mean, throughout most of my adult life, which is kind of crazy to think about, but to kind of build up through my personal work, and then up through helping this company as a startup, to now the larger business that it has become. I mean, we've gone from doing about like 10 rings every 2 weeks to now I'm designing and printing about 90 a month. We're, you know, cataloging everything properly. We're keeping everything organized. We're still taking on new clients, and it doesn't feel like everyone's, you know, losing their minds. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of been how the flow of this business has gone. Hopefully that sounded pretty good.
I can attest to that. It sounded pretty fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, with that, I wanted to say a big thank you to our panelists. Thanks for being a part of this, and it was a pleasure seeing and hearing from you all again. I really do, or we really do appreciate it at Benign Creations here. Now I'm going to take this time to explain our products and workflow, and then we'll go into Q&A after this. So the Benign Core series, it prints at exceptional speed without sacrificing print resolution or surface quality. So this is our newest 3D printer that we've had, and as you've heard from our panelists' stories, it increases the speed of the workflow, and the prints look, well, fantastic, as they said. So next we have the Benign Clean. So the next process in DLP printing is cleaning off all the liquid resin. This automates your post-processing with thorough no-mess cleaning. Simply uses isopropyl alcohol and quickly cleans your parts in about 10-minute washes there. So, and then after that, you need to post-cure your model. So we have a Benign Model Cure. It's a powerful design that reduces cure time with memory settings for fast, repeatable workflow. So place your parts in a container in water there, and then it quickly cures the outer layer of your models there. And finally, we have quite a few materials now, specifically formulated to achieve high resolution prints for design and engineering applications. So we've got our castable resins for jewelry, as well as other markets as need be, such as modeling or engineering applications there. So, all right. We're now going to open the floor for Q&A with our panelists and us at Benign Creations. So please, listeners, feel free to ask any questions, and we'll get those answers to you as soon as possible. Okay, looks like we have a first question here. So this is for all our panelists, and answer as you wish there. Why did you choose the Benign Core series? Kevin, would you mind starting us off there? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So for me, I had, like I said, several other printers, and what Patrick mentioned, I don't make any money off of the 3D printer. It's just kind of part of a process. So I didn't want to be a printer technician anymore. And the reason I went with the Benign Core is it is so stinking simple, and it just gives me my parts. So from the time that I sit down and do my custom CAD model, I upload it to the printer. I don't have to have a separate computer for it. I can send the model to the printer with Wi-Fi. It just has a streamlined process. once the print is done, I have the wash unit, and I would recommend anybody, if you're going to buy a B9 core series, buy everything. Buy the wash unit, the cure unit. It so much streamlines your process. It's just unbelievable. I spend so little time messing with the printer, and now my time is spent on designing, which is what I do. I'm a custom jewelry designer, so I make one-of-a-kind pieces, and that's what I want to spend my time doing, and that's what makes me money. So when I do the 3D model, I want the simplest process. So like I said, the core has the Wi-Fi in order for you to upload your model. It only takes an hour to hour and a half to print most models. The longest prints I've had, I've done some contract work for some manufacturers, and I had this huge cuff bracelet. I personally chose the Core 550 because I wanted the build area. And I've seen so little difference in resolution from the 530 to the 550 personally, that it does, you know, for me, it hasn't made that much difference. And but those big bracelets still only took about 3 hours, three and a half hours at the most. And my other printer, the average print time was at least, you know, 3.5 to 4.5 hours was your average print time for just a ring. And here I'm making these big giant cuff bracelets, and being able to first fit it on the build platform, and secondly, didn't really interrupt my my workflow much as a result of it. The B9 wash is worth it. If you have to sit there and smell the isopropyl alcohol all the time, I have a smaller confined space with my jewelry studio, so I didn't want to smell that stuff, and that just totally takes away the smell of the isopropyl alcohol. I don't have to sit there with sprays, and you know, everybody says, oh, well, you can blow this off and do that. What's great is it comes with another build platform, so you can throw your parts in there, go off, do something else, and already have another set of prints running on the B9 core. So again, another huge advantage. And then when it's done, oftentimes I don't get back right away because I'm doing other things. You know, like Patrick said, I mean, I could be setting stones and, you know, doing some other designs, whatever it might be. And till I get back, sometimes I'll pull it out and the parts are already dry. I don't even have to blow them off or anything. And then I can get them set up to go into the cure unit, run them through the cure unit. And usually the average time, you know, for most pieces, it's about six to 9 minutes, unless it's something really heavy. And then I can go right from there to getting them sprued up for casting. So I can't even say enough about how it's changed my workflow. The core series with their whole system, it's plug and play. I actually did a video that you can find on YouTube that I did a box opening, and it was because a couple friends of mine were kind of joking with me and saying, Kevin, you got to do a box opening. I was like, okay, I'll do it for you. And I mean, everything comes in the box. I mean, everything you need, right down to gloves, working with the resins, because obviously you don't want to get this stuff on your skin. And I'll tell you, it's been an awesome system.
All right, perfect. Thank you for answering that. Yeah, I can attest. The isopropyl smells is a killer. All right, Patrick, how about yourself? Patrick? All right, how about you, Trevor? Let's see. In terms of the why did you choose the core series? Can you answer that for us?
Yeah, totally. Despite my love of B9, every time we got a new printer, I did look around. You know, I did see what was out there on the market, see what was available, and when the time came to switch from the 1.2 to something that was just more efficient, less tweaking required. Kevin made some really good points. I mean, basically, it just came down to the fact that the the price was great compared to its competitors. And after all the years of, changing PDMS and switching these settings and making sure everything worked, and the ease of use, was just really, really sold me. The fact that I can just put a file in and it comes out exactly as I want it to is the greatest gift that a printer could ever give me. It's just, it's pretty amazing. So, again, as Kevin said, it's kind of just a part of the workflow, right? And so having a printer that does what you want when you need it to be done is really what matters the most. We have at Cavalier, we have a 530, and in my studio, I have a 550. And I agree that the difference in resolution is pretty minuscule compared to having that extra build space. I've done a little bit of small modeling work with some of the non-castable resins, and having that bigger space to, build little bits, like little parts I need around the shop, extra little things like that has been very helpful, as well as the fact that for whatever reason, if I have to print, a whole set of sterling silver rings, I can print like 30 of them at a time, with not really a huge discernible difference in quality. So yeah, really, number one, definitely, it's just been the ease of use and the fact that I no longer have to worry about, how the prints are going to turn out.
Trevor, you did touch on something pretty great there. A lot of our customers, they actually like, the jewelry shop owners such as yourselves, and they produce the jewelry, but then there's the secondary uses like printing those little parts around the workshop, and helping the day-to-day operations by printing those little parts that can help your business as well, like using the different resins and stuff like that. So that's awesome. All right, we do have another question. This one's directed to Kevin. How do you leverage 3D printing as a sales tool, like prototyping rings for customers on the spot, design verification, and etc.?
Well, for myself, a lot of times, like particularly if I'm working with long distance customers, especially, I use the benign clay to send out prototypes for my clients. So once I get everything narrowed down through my digital assets with with my CAD software and renders and things, then I actually send out a piece to the client in order to finalize everything. I have some friends that will, because you can print with the standard gray, you can get something knocked out probably in about 15 minutes at a low or a low resolution. So you could inevitably have people like in your store, and while you're with them, you could technically print something out. It's that fast. But for me, that's pretty much how I use it. I just use it pretty much to verify designs, because when you're looking at a big object on a screen, people aren't practiced at shrinking things down to scale like what we are. We can see it as a piece of jewelry, but they can't. So I really focus a lot on that, and I want them to put it on their hand if it's a ring or if it's a pendant. I want to stick the stone in the mounting and let them put it on their neck so that they can see it. It's just kind of how I do things. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
That it does. Thank you. All right, so our next question that we have is directed to all of you. What is the benign model cure exactly, and how do you use it? Trevor, could you start us off on that? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. The benign model cure is the light curing unit for the benign series, or the benign suite, I guess. So when your models come out of the printer, you clean them off. I also have the benign wash unit, and it's amazing. So you clean all that extra resin off, and then you put the models into the benign cure, which cures them and readies them for casting.
Perfect, thank you. So we do have a question pointed at us here at Benign. What non-casting resins do you have available? So we do have a black resin, which is a detailed and rigid material for engineering prototypes. We have a gray resin, which is great for speed prototyping. It's our fastest printing resin. You can print an entire ring in about 15 minutes or so. Rugged is another material that is a tough engineering material, so it's a little bit pliable and can withstand heavy use post printing. And then slate is a model making resin, and it's a high definition, so it goes down to 20 micron layer slices and just prints models with yeah, some really amazing detail. That's probably my favorite resin right now. Yeah, and then as always, more to come depending on need and where our customers take us. So yeah. Oh, yep. Another question here, and actually, I was curious on this one. So Trevor, you'd mentioned having to change your PDMS with our previous printers or the vats themselves. So why don't you have to do that anymore? And could you elaborate on the DurVat for us?
Yeah, for sure. So in the older printers, in the 1.1 and 1.2, the printing vat, the bottom of it, there was a layer of a material called the PDMS. And as light came through that material, it would slightly get foggy over time. And that fogginess would then start to affect prints. So it's kind of like blurring a computer screen progressively over time. So it would make prints a little blurry, so things just wouldn't be as sharp, or small holes might get filled in. And once it got to a point where it was just getting not manageable, you basically pull this PDMS out, and then it was a two-part, so you mix it and pour it in and let it set, and then get back to printing. So the frustrating part, I mean, after a while you kind of get the system down, but every once in a while you're pouring this stuff, it would there would be bubbles. It might not be as even as you'd want it. You know, there were just issues with the pouring process, like pouring any liquid resin, so or liquid two-part silicone. So yeah, the benefit with the core is now we have what Cody had mentioned, they're DurVats. So they are a print vat with a permanent layer of I don't know, some magic material that does exactly what the PDMS did, but without having the need to replace it. So, I mean, we were told when we got the core printers that these DurVats would, you know, they'd have a year warranty, and that's something that people look at a lot, because they say, oh no, like this vat is expensive and it only lasts a year. But we are still running on our original vats. They have not changed at all. They are still working as well as the first day we got them. So yes, things can happen and they can be damaged, mostly I would assume from user error. But other than that, I mean, if you're just using them as they're meant to be used and using them normally, these vats don't require any maintenance. They print great prints every time, and I do not have to change the PDMS, which is fantastic.
Awesome. So it used to be a consumable, but now has moved to, as long as with proper usage, being a stable part of the printing process, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Awesome. All right, we do have a follow-up question on that. So how does benign handle switching between resins like Kevin was talking about? Is that easy to do, or do you need to clean the vats or buy multiple vats to store the resin between use?
Well, the machine comes with 2 vats, so I actually have 3 myself, but you can actually keep the resins in the vats if you keep them tilted so that the window isn't covered with resin. And but if you need to clean them, I have it's just basically a matter of filtering out the resin, putting it back into your bottle, which they give you, a screen filter for that. And then it's just a matter of using isopropyl alcohol and spraying it off and wiping it out with a microfiber cloth, and you're all done. It's really easy to do. The slate resin, which is the gray one that I use for prototypes, that resin I don't leave because it can actually stick to the bottom of the vat. It's still not hard to clean out or anything, but that's the only one that I actually clean the vat after every use, just for that particular one. The other ones I don't. So.
All right, perfect. Thank you. And Trevor or Patrick, anything to add more on that? All right, if not, we have, let's see. Yeah, if the panelists don't have anything else to add in terms of more information for our customers, we can end for now. But yeah, I asked that question, Ed. Any more additions?
I just noticed that someone wrote, how long can models be left in the model cure? And I mean, it maxes out at just under 10 minutes. So you can leave them in there for that whole 10 minutes, or I usually do a couple sets of 10, but I know lots of people have different systems based on what their casting setup's like and their kind of experience with different resins. So I don't know if there's a max time you can leave them in there, but I mean, they just kind of get more cured over time.
Absolutely, yeah. It's dependent on resin and geometry of the parts, and yeah, we'd be happy to provide that information to you, depending on your lane of production there. So, all right. Well, I think we've run our time limit there. Again, a big thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if we didn't get to your question today, please email us at info@b9c.com. That's info@b9c.com. Or call us at 605-787-0652. Again, that's 605-787-0652. And then learn more or request a sample at b9c.com. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, and hope you have a great rest of your day.